I'm just going to do a quick, I know that we got some people on the YouTube stream as well, but just wanted to welcome everybody. Thank you guys for coming out. Deepthi and Sandy have really put together some awesome presentations, so I'm not going to say a whole lot. But welcome to the SELG, I think one of the first in-person that we've had in a while. So we'll go through with Deepthi, we'll take a quick break, and we'll switch over to Sandy, and please be as participative as you like.
Are we live streaming right now?
We are live streaming, so everything you say can and will. Awesome. I'm going to pass it to Deepthi.
Hey everyone, good evening, and welcome to Verndale. So today I'm going to talk about journey of Sitecore, Coveo for Sitecore, and one of our enterprise clients. And to begin with, let's start a quick word about me. So this is Deepthi here. I'm a technical lead at Verndale, and I handle cross-functional teams and mentor and help them where needed to give a successful end result, which is the website in our case. So one of the most important things that I love to personally is to solve tough technical problems, and that has always been my interest. And Verndale luckily gives me like all sorts of opportunities to do that. So thank you. Let's get this started. I'm excited to share our roller coaster ride with one of our enterprise level clients, which basically came to Verndale with two biggest things on their mind when they came to Verndale. One being they wanted to revamp their whole, searching for home experience on the end user, because they're a huge home building company and they want to change the experience on the end user journey. And two, they wanted to do digital unification. They have presence over US and Canada, about 8 regions, and they wanted to unify everything into one big website. So both of these kind of like for tech arc or tech lead scream two things. One main thing is that search, right? So a good search strategy is very important because we are adding a lot of content. It's a lot of regions, a lot of content. And two, find your home kind of says it all, like, the keyword is about search. So we wanted to come up with a search strategy which is very performant and efficient, and also, can do certain level of magic out of the box. And Coveo had to offer all the things that we were looking for. So we went ahead with Coveo for Sitecore, and that's how the journey started. Like with any third-party tool you're about to pick and start working on, you kind of like hope that you don't have to mold it, you don't have to tweak with it a whole lot, and you can get away with what they offer out of the box. But this wasn't the case for our project because of heavy design demands and tough clients. So that's why it's fun, right? So let's get started. Okay, so before we start, I just wanted to get a feel for if anybody ever had experience with Coveo for Sitecore, if they installed it on their local or played with it. Maybe anybody? Sandy? Oh my God, Michael, I didn't know that. That's a news. Okay, so I'll keep in mind that not many of you guys know what Coveo for Sitecore is, but this is not an introduction to Coveo for Sitecore per se, but I'll give enough context for everybody to follow along. So Coveo for Sitecore is like an integration with the Coveo's actual search engine platform that they have built. They made sure that they use very good MVVM so that they can basically change the end platform. In this case, it's Coveo for Sitecore, but I think they do have Coveo for Salesforce as well. So basically what they have, like when you first brand new installation of Coveo for Sitecore, when you install on your machine, they have certain components which come with it, like Coveo search engine, which they call CES. There's Coveo search API, and then there's Coveo admin service. So all these three components work together, work hard to give the result set that Coveo for Sitecore is looking for. So basically 4 components and 3 work hard to give one what it needs. So that in a nutshell is Coveo for Sitecore. Now the beauty about this, which I really like, is when I got Coveo for Sitecore running, FYI, you need to follow the documentation like a Bible, and you will get the instance working on your local. But once you do that, you will fall in love with the initial no suspense game where I see an expression from Sandy, but we'll talk about it offline. But one quick thing that I want to point out is that there's no suspense to where are the configurations located, where are the layouts, where are all the stuff that a developer would need, because I got a chance to work with earlier version of Coveo for Sitecore recently, and I really appreciated what they did with 4.0, which is the version we are using, is that all the configurations are wherever Sitecore, assumes to be or prefers to be. So the developer kind of can get started, modifying the configuration or having to see what layouts has to offer to him and things like that. So I think that is pretty cool. And another thing that I really like, which is the second point out there, is a Sitecore control panel. When you go to Sitecore control panel, there is a whole section about Coveo for Sitecore. You can change all the instance level settings from there, configuration settings from there, and you can also see diagnostics and see if there's any issues with Coveo for Site, for instance. And another quick thing about the Coveo configuration is that it lies in the Coveo, something called as Coveo custom configuration. It's a patch file, and again, Coveo for Sitecore does a really good job of offering patching, which is what Sitecore recommends, and not editing the main core configuration file. So it kind of gives you an opportunity to see what is going to be indexed in your indexes, what you want to drop from your indexes, and things like that. It's pretty flexible, and it allows you to basically drive it through the business demands. And another thing that we choose Coveo basically for is their amazing power of building search pages right from the box. If your design team and the goals are kind of aligned to what Coveo has to offer. So that I think is pretty great, and you can easily build a search page, a search results page, or a rendering out of the box, tweak it a little bit and make it look awesome. So I guess that is very good. Obviously, as I said, I guess this pretty much should have a good context for moving on with the presentation, but if you guys are curious after the presentation to see what it has to offer, I like the very short video that they have. Sandy, you'll remember the video. So I guess that is pretty cool, and you guys can go and watch it, and then you will maybe fall in love with it. And the last one I wanted to mention is about the version we are using for this enterprise level client, and that is on-premise Pro. There is a subtle reason why we picked this, because when we were actually, getting ready, geared up to start the development on this client, cloud version of Coveo was fairly new. It was just out there. So we didn't want it to add too much, in India we call masala. So we didn't want it to add too much spice to the mix. So we just cut it down with using the Pro on-premise version. So, but anybody out there, my recommendation would be if you're starting fresh with Coveo for Sitecore, their cloud version is pretty awesome. They have machine learning capability and very, very strong connectivity with personalization. So you can do whatever you want with it. So it's pretty cool. So I would recommend you guys to go check it out if you want Coveo for Sitecore for some of your projects. All right, so let's jump straight up to the challenges and goals that we had by using Coveo for Sitecore on this enterprise level client. Well, I'm fairly listing only my favorites up here on the board, but there were quite a few, apart from the list. But if anybody is curious, maybe after the meeting we can have a quick chat over what challenges we had and how we resolved it, apart from what I'm going to talk about in the presentation. So now, one of the challenges we had for this client is the data is very, very hierarchical. That means that they have a lot of parent-child relationships, tons of it actually, mostly because of the SEO drive. They wanted to have long-tail URLs. That means that in Sitecore world, there's a lot of parent-child relationships, which is common in most cases, but in this case it was heavy, and that was definitely one of the challenges for implementing Coveo for Sitecore. And the second challenge we had was most of the filters or search filters they wanted to see on their pages were mostly multi-valued. I don't know if it's coincidence or if it's maybe just a fate, but they kept wanting multi-valued facets. And when I say multi-valued, it's kind of hazy. The reason it's hazy is multi-value could be as simple as a multi-list in Sitecore. But in our case, it was not as simple, and it was basically constructing multi-value from one or more templates, plus one or two more values on the same template. So it was a big challenge, and I'll talk about how Coveo makes it, fortunately, easier. With just little tweaks here and there, you can actually achieve what you want. And the third one, this is my most favorite one, is spanning a facet, especially a facet slider. Facet slider is one of the components that comes with Coveo out of the box, and it's a filter that you can. It's more or less like a control that you can use on your search results, but that spans across values. Like for example, I'll talk more in detail, but then just to give you an idea, like you have a slider for search of homes. It could be, price. Price could be a slider, like where you have a min value, you have max value, you slide, and you see the results related to that value selected by the user. So our challenge was we have to span this facet slider across multiple number value fields, which for Coveo, out of the box, it doesn't work like that. Inherently, like the index doesn't accept that. The Coveo index doesn't have a multi-value number field at all. And when I approached Coveo, they said that this is not common. So they tried their best to kind of tell us that maybe you guys should convince the clients and to not use it at all. And it was interesting. It was an interesting turn. And we know that we have a tough client. We cannot just go say, hey, this fast slider doesn't span across multiple number fields. They're going to be like, what? So we really had no option but to brainstorm, and luckily we got through it, and that's the fun part. Now we'll talk more about how we solved each of these problems, but one thing I noticed, and which I grew with my experience on building this, is you got to know your tools. If you don't know what Coveo offers to debug efficiently, you can never mold the product because you're scared. What am I going to do? I mean, can I even reach the result? Because we have time limits, we have to be cautious on effort, and we have to deliver a good product. So it's a lot on us, a lot on stake. So you got to know your tools, and once I kind of know the tools that Coveo is offering, especially with the debugging, the power was like limitless, because I knew, oh, this is not working because of this. So once I knew it, it was easier to debug. So I would like to, at the end of the presentation, I would like to go over the tools that they offer and how you can use it to basically have no suspense and no trial and error, which I guess most of us kind of hate. Like, we don't want to do trial and error blindfolded, and when we know stuff, it's more easier. So I would cover that at the end of the presentation. Now coming to the problem solving, I did talk about the data being hierarchical and how it was causing problem for us. So now, just for the context of this presentation, I want to give you guys an example of what is the parent-child relationship we are talking about. So this is home building company, right? So they have communities, and each community could have a move-in ready home, and it could have a residence. So residence is nothing but a plan. I guess, the lingo in LA is like, we have a community and we have a plan. We have, like, say, 5 plans across the community, and then each plan is applied to a move-in ready home. So in that way, you guys can kind of like relate to it. So now, what was happening is, in each of the search result rendering or view that we were making, there was always a clause that a move-in ready, for example, that I just picked up, needs to have this like 1 or 2, 3 fields from the parent, which is the community. So now, how do we go about this? There are a couple of ways and dirty ways to go about it. One is just say, content author, please enter XYZ fields on both community and also in move-in ready. It's kind of like, not very efficient, we thought. And the second one, which is, I think I'm right when I say folding, which means that, like, you are essentially saying on the front-end side of things, please grab me all the move-in readies, but also grab their parent so that I have access to the parent. It's pretty cool, like, you can do it. But in our case, we were just thinking, hey, we just need 1 or 2 values. Why should we load up the whole parent in the front end, which is kind of expensive when you look at, like, maybe a lot of records when I talked about regional unification, you have to think about like bigger picture where there could be a lot of items, and we didn't want it to go with that route. The simple answer after a bunch of brainstorming was why not use computed fields? Like, whoever is coming from Sitecore world might already know what computed fields are. And Coveo operates very, very similarly. So computed fields were the best bet for us, both in terms of efficiency and also in terms of easiness. So that's what we went with. Just a quick word on how computed fields operate in Coveo for Sitecore. So basically one thing, I think the top point here is very, very crucial, is that every time when there is indexing, re-indexing, or rebuilding of indexes, maybe because of updates, maybe because of manual run of indexes, this code, this set of code or computed field will run. So we have to be very, very cautious in terms of not abusing it. Like, it's good, but use it with like caution. And the second one is, this is typically for like non-technical folks out there, this is like a magic field. Like, it's there, but it's not there. So if you're a content author, you go into Sitecore, you go to the item that I call move-in ready, you will never find community name associated with the move-in ready. It's not there. But on the back end, which is the index, it is there. So typically, like, it's used for adding complementary information to the Sitecore items. And I will show you guys like how easy it is to basically add a computed field using C#. It's pretty straightforward. But just an added note here is like how we made it efficient is that thinking about it, like every rebuild of indexes, this code is going to run. So we made sure that the code is being run only on the selective templates and not the whole world. Like, we don't want to run the computed field code on every single item that's being indexed. So we were very cautious on that. So if you guys see here, the example that I talked about, on the left-hand side in the tree, you see a move-in ready home. You can take like either 27660 or 27672 as an example. That's a child of community, which is Heidelin in this case. And it basically inherits 3 fields, which is latitude, longitude, and title from the community, which is Heidelin. And what we do with that is, in the search results, we have a map. And on the map, we do need handler over latitude, longitude of the community and not the move-in ready based on requirements. So we made sure we had the handle over when we are parsing through the search results in the JSON, we have these values automatically populated there. So we don't have to get the parent or duplicate the entries or anything of that sort. So that's how we solved our data-related problem. Now, this is how you add the computed field. It's a simple 3-step process. So what you do is you inherit from iComputed index field. It's an interface. And then once you inherit from that, you have to make sure that you add the computed field, telling Coveo that this is a computed field and please compute it when you are doing indexes. So this is, again, very simple. All you need is the namespace where you are extending the iComputed index class, and then you need the DLL in which it's residing. Typically, like how projects run is you have a special project where you're extending stuff. It's called either extensions or maybe third parties or something like that. So you toss it there and then you just point the DLL and Coveo will pick it up and then it will run it. Now to use this new field, you can just pretty much follow the rhythm that Coveo follows on typical Sitecore field as well. And you're good to go. It will render on the UI. Either you can use it in the underscore template. Typically, Coveo supports underscore templates on the JavaScript side. So you can use it either on that, or you can use it like even in the JavaScript other than the underscore. So moving on. So we have 2 tools now, as we talked about. One is computed fields, and one is like how powerful it is, like in terms of easiness and how to add. Now, one problem we had, as I said about, is all the filtering that they wanted was on multi-value. Like, it was not a single. Typically, how facets which come with Coveo work is like you tell the facet, this is the field I want you to look up. This is where you go and see and fetch all the data, and it does the magic, and you're there. But then here we had bunch of fields that were on the same template or maybe multiple templates. So now what we did to accommodate that is use a combination of something Coveo calls as computed multi-value fields. It's pretty similar to what we've seen before. You do the same, pattern, but only difference here, as you see on the next screen, is first you do the first 3 steps are pretty similar. All you do here is you say multi-value true, and then when you actually add the Coveo rendering on your presentation, you go ahead and then you say it as multi-value as well. There is
The screen not changing.
We're still looking at the map.
The problem solver. Maybe retest it.
You guys see it now? No? Technical difficulties. Is this still casting? I thought you had a question.
You're sounding great though, Deepthi. Coveo Queen is killing it.
Oh, yeah.
Want some more chairs?
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. Do you guys see it now?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so just quickly, so the only difference between configuring a multi-value field is that on the presentation, when you add this particular facet, which is a rendering that comes out of the box from Coveo, you just have to make sure that there is a checkbox on it that says is multi-value field. You just have to check it. And then when you're adding a facet, which is typical Sitecore buckets facets, you just make sure that you are pointing to the computed field that you just defined, and you're good to go. And the last screenshot kind of shows how it looks on the UI when you add a multi-value computed field. In our case, it was beds. So we had beds, min beds and max beds on the neighborhood, and we had to capture both of them. And there was also beds on move-in ready. So we had to combine all 3 and then make the facet. So that's how we accomplished that challenge. Now this is the one that where Coveo said, just convince the clients not to use it, and we had no option but to brainstorm it. Now I'm a strong believer that if you look hard, you will find something, but in our case, we had to just time box it and say, if we don't find it, then the clients have to kind of live with it, but luckily we could figure it out. So I'll just explain how and how we came to a conclusion. So basically, what we did is, okay, so the problem is that the facet slider can only accommodate one field on one number field, and that's pretty much it. It can't accommodate multi-value field. And in our case, what happened was there was this neighborhood and the price. So the price was min price and max price on the neighborhood, and we had no way to span through the multi-value two fields on the same template. So how we battled this is basically what we did. In this slide, you'll see that how we approached this problem is we created a facet and we kind of cheated Coveo and said, do not compute min and max for this slider, just leave it blank or just put in some default which has a huge range. And now what we did on the back end is we made calls on the back end to basically parse through all the children and then compute min and max on our side. So that was first step. And the second step is we have to somehow tell Coveo, hey, you have to consider another field. And what we did on that is we used something called as disjunctive expressions that Coveo offers, basically saying, do whatever you want to do, plus do an or of this, include this as well. So basically, we kind of cheated Coveo, but achieved what we could. So Coveo did a facet across, say for example, maximum price, and then we did on the back end using disjunctive expressions to cater to minimum on the fields. So that's how we achieved it. And just a quick word on disjunction expressions. They are pretty much, as I said, let Coveo do its thing, construct its expressions, the search expressions and the filters, and just do an OR. When you are in a situation where you want everything that Coveo has to offer plus a little something, and for that little something, disjunction expressions are awesome. So that's what we did. I don't know if you guys see the screenshot, but in that it kind of, what it does, it highlights something called as AQ, CQ and DQ. The screenshot I took is from Chrome Tools. That's how the query is constructed by Coveo. That goes to CES, as I explained, one of the component that gives back the search results. So it computes AQ, it just combines all the search results that we gave, and then it makes AQ. And if we specify please keep this as disjunction, it makes DQ. So that's how it works, and it was all well. We were able to achieve the slider, and that concept was applied pretty much anywhere we had that problem, and it performs very well. Another thing we did is that we were a little skeptical. You know, this was the first time we were bending the product. We wanted to make sure we are not crossing a line or we are not doing the right thing. So we got a confirmation from Coveo support that it's indeed fine and you're good to go. So now for debugging, one of the very cool tools Coveo has to offer is the CES admin tool. And what it basically does is, it's a URL, it's available on port 8081 when you install Coveo for Sitecore. And what it basically does is, it gives you the power of seeing all the indexes, all the sources that you have on your instance. And you can basically go browse around, see if the index is being built properly, rebuild the indexes. There's like pretty cool functionality that it offers. You can even do incremental refresh. It's a lot to kind of like explore and use when you need. And again, like, you know, the admin tool is one of my favorite, especially with the computed fields. You can basically go and see on each item, oh, you added a computed field. Is it there? Is it coming? Is it working as expected? So you go to admin tool, you click the item of the template, for example, move in ready or community. You see if the field is there or not right there. The name looks a little bit gibberish, but that's what Coveo constructs for, you know, using their hash. But you can decode it pretty easily, so it's easy enough. And another important thing is that not many people know that you can copy what you have on the Chrome tools as a query that Coveo constructs, and you can paste it here in the index browser to see, is your query not functioning just on the UI level, or in the backend is there any bigger problem? So this would be like a very good tool to see. For example, the disjunction expressions that I talked about was not working as expected on different tabs. So we were not sure what's happening. So all we did is came here, looked at this, and then we were like, oh, so we have to add a conditional for a tab to make sure it doesn't run on the different tab and give a, you know, irregular results. So this is really cool as well. And CES console is pretty much like any console. It just displays what happens on the backend, like what queries are being fired, what system events are happening. This is a great thing to see and visualize what's happening on the backend when you fire a query on the UI side. So this is quite handy as well. And our favorite, the Chrome developer tools, like there's no question, we all know it, it's awesome. So this kind of gives you what request headers are, what parameters are going in, what is the results. In the next screenshot you will kind of see like form data, like, you know, what is being passed, what is the sort criteria. So this kind of helped me find some little hiccups that Coveo had on the version that we were using, because no matter what I did, the sort criteria was still passing as default. So it's a really great tool to debug and find your issues. And this is Sitecore control panel, nothing fancy here, but just to know that you can build your indexes. If you see on the top two that are checked, those are the Coveo indexes. You can rename them based on your instance, but it comes bare bones with one for web and one for master. And that was the right side, you see that's the section I was talking about the tools we have on the configuration. And this is the diagnostics. Basically, you see here if any of the Coveo components is red, that means it's a signal that something is wrong, and you got to see what's happening. But it's a great tool, and Coveo for Sitecore support basically relies on this a lot. When we take a package, they kind of know what's going on and they debug it accordingly. I'm done, guys. So any questions? Oh, thank you.
I'm gonna have loads of questions for you tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow is fine.
No, I definitely, the admin tool is something that I'd love to dig into with you, because we're using a lot of out-of-the-box stuff for a project I'm doing. How much out-of-the-box stuff did you guys do for your client?
It again depends on out-of-the-box, like, you know, are we using REST API calls to bring in the indexes and the values, result set, or we are using JavaScript components that Coveo has to offer. So the challenge with this enterprise client was, we were wanting to use JavaScript framework for its benefit, but we had to mold it a bit to accommodate to the design. But I do believe that in Verndale we've used Coveo in the past successfully with using REST API and not using the out-of-the-box functionality in terms of controls. So it really depends, but admin tool rocks, and it has just helped me do so much more. So it's awesome.
So we're using a lot of out-of-the-box stuff, and we found it's a little convoluted to kind of set up and understand.
Yes.
But when you understand it, it's like it's great.
Yeah.
But it would be great to talk for sure about.
Yes,
your-
definitely, sure. And oh, sweet, thank you. You guys are so sweet. So I just wanted to end by thanking Verndale team specifically for letting me go rogue most of the occasions without any complaints. Said that the trust they bestowed on me was awesome. So I would like to thank Verndale team for that. And quick thank you for Coveo question and answer team specifically. They were, we all understand that they'll not have answers for every single thing, but the brainstorming that they did with me and the way they answered to a point where I can figure out my own answer based on some of the functionality they talked about. So I guess hats off to them on that, and that's it. You guys know.
Okay, we're going to take a 5 or 10 minute break.
If anyone needs to use the restrooms here outside in the hallway.
Foley, and I am also a technical lead here at Verndale. And it was kind of a reluctant position for me because I consider myself, or I always thought I would be this lifelong programmer and never someone who ever wanted to work or manage other people or do anything like that, but I was convinced otherwise, and I love it. It's kind of nice that some of you can relate. You can pass off that monotonous work, tuck that away, and work on the more fun things like integrations, and that's something that we're going to talk about today. I took a break from coding a few years back, and so I was a high school computer science teacher for 3 years, and also I instructed at a university as well in Michigan. There's my Twitter. I have my Slack and Twitter for the end as well. So from the teaching perspective, I earned eyes behind my head, and also I know how to spot anybody misbehaving. You're going to get sent to the principal. Dave, do we have a principal's office?
Dave's
Somewhere
just.
around here.
Maybe it looks like I might be drunk and disorderly conduct. All right, we're going. Okay, so I'm going to be speaking about a little bit about data exchange framework, a little bit about Microsoft Cognitive Services, and a lot about the hackathon that a group of us participated in earlier this month. So myself, Deepthi, who you met in the previous presentation, and our VP of Development, Liz Frenzani, embarked on our first ever Sitecore Hackathon. I'll be presenting on that experience with a focus in on a little bit of understanding the data exchange framework, which was one of the topics that you could choose from. And this data exchange framework is available for Sitecore 8.1, so it's been around for a little bit, but I haven't seen a lot of excitement for it. And after getting into it earlier this month, I'm really surprised about that. So I hope to spark a little bit of excitement and migrate some people toward it. Since I see we have a good mix of tech and non-tech people, I'm going to do a lot higher level than I was anticipating, so I might skip a slide or two considering. But how many people here have done data exchange framework or have worked with it? The two of you? Okay, cool.
What was your team name?
Our team name was, let's see, the Lady Verndalians. Yeah, so that's we were team number 9. We got in there pretty quick, and so we had the options of doing an Azure POS module or develop a module that could be used in conjunction with XSA, the accelerator, or share a module that was built for Habitat. But we were deciding between doing a module for Habitat and the data exchange framework. For Habitat, we knew that Sitecore had a lot of cool, Verndale had a lot of cool core modules that we use, and like most other agencies, but we didn't quite see that as the challenge that we were looking for with the hackathon. So all 3 of us decided on, we all love integration, so we decided on data exchange framework, and we had no idea, or none of us had really even dove into it, so it was a cool topic to learn about. So simply put, the data exchange framework is a real easy way to sync data between 2 systems, and you'd know that as an integration. So it's integrating, it could be Sitecore with a third party, so Sitecore would pass data to the third party, or a third party might pass data into Sitecore. But this data exchange framework also offers the ability to pass from third party to third party, with Sitecore just acting as conduit and not really storing any data or just passing the data along. You've probably heard the term ETL before, which stands for extract, transform, and load. This is an ETL. So I think several of you have worked with that before, data warehousing, bringing in data or pushing out data. So this is essentially what it is. But the goal of DEF is to move the items that are configured inside the code outside and put it in the Sitecore content tree or in the Sitecore admin area, so that simple changes that are made could just merely be doing with configuration rather than coding. So, you know, after all the integration providers are set up with the coding and the configuration, then you could probably use that same integration provider, let's say for a CRM or for write code, for instance. You could use that multiple times with different variables added to it. So during the hackathon, another obstacle we had to overcome was terminology, and I'm going to brush on the terminology a little bit. So I think that was the major sticking point was just we understood the concept of what data exchange framework was, but it was really understanding where you put the information, where everything went, and how it all tied together. And believe me, I don't know about you guys, but I thought the initial setup of a new provider was rather tedious, but well worth it at the end. There's just a lot of steps to it. I think it took us about an hour and a half. Well, yeah, it took us a while to get that done, which is a lot of time when 2 people are working on it. I'm reading my notes from one and projecting on the other, so I got to keep them in sync. As an example for data exchange framework, here we have 2 examples. We have an example of pulling context from the CRM and creating new or updating existing context inside the XDB, where the source is the CRM and the target is Sitecore. And you'll need to know those 2 terminologies to understand the rest of the slides, but it's pretty easy. So the source is where the data comes from, and the target is where it's going to end up. You can also do the opposite, where you're updating a contact in the CRM with information from XDB. So the source and target get flipped around. Let's see. So when you're creating a new provider or setting up a new provider, the main tasks are to set up a connection to the third-party system, and then identify all the fields for mapping, and then perform the API call to import or extract the data from the system. Sitecore has provided the following pre-wired providers for download to give us all a jump start. So, of course, they've created a Sitecore provider. So the data exchange framework is a larger animal, and they've provided a Sitecore provider which allows you to efficiently access the items or media or XDB records very efficiently. And as you can see, you can either do XDB records, or you can point to a specific template or templates and pull the fields. They also created, let's say Node.js.
Yeah.
My Node.js is acting up. So they also provided a dynamic CRM provider for connecting to Microsoft Dynamics. And then, who is it? Adam Khan and Nick Barad. They demonstrated using a simple file system provider where they pull in values from a CSV file that's on the website, in the website file system, and bring in those values. So it's very simple, but I think that actually was very effective for us to really wrap our hands around what we needed to do. So to explain the benefits of DEF, let's dive into an example. And I'm going to look at Salesforce, for instance. I won't dive into all of the arrows, but what you see here is all the coding that needs to be done inside Sitecore, all the custom .NET coding to connect, to map, to connect to the next system, and then insert or update. All of that logic needs to be done. So if that's all 100% code, if any of those areas need to be updated, it usually means another deployment to production, and basically your production system may go down for a little bit of time. Also, if you have a bug in it, it goes back and goes through the environment again, and I don't need to explain the difference between making a coding change and a configuration change. But as an example, you could, if you're promoting from Sitecore to Salesforce and you wanted to add an additional field, it would require a whole code deployment. I think in one of our projects we're doing that right now, And unfortunately, it goes through a whole different process than what DEF would offer. So in DEF, it's much simpler. Once your Salesforce provider is established in the code, then the rest of it is written all as configuration in Sitecore. So you would start with accessing the Sitecore provider that we just talked about, read it into what are called pipelines, and then there's a series of steps that can be run against that data. Map it to Sitecore or Salesforce, establish an endpoint to the Salesforce provider that you just created, and then iterate through and insert and update it into Salesforce. So for the pipeline steps, you can have what are called properties, and those are things that could change per integration. So as I mentioned, it would be kind of cool to be able to just package up this Salesforce provider that you just created and use it on any project, and that's the whole idea, is that you write this Salesforce provider and never again, well, with some exceptions and some custom work, but if you have a basic Salesforce connection, you can just plug this provider into your Salesforce, load in the package, and then configure some of the properties that would change based on the client, and you're good to go for the most part if the mapping is pretty clean. So some of the, I guess you can't see my mouse, but some of the properties that would be exposed would be like for the Salesforce provider would be like the consumer secret key, the consumer password, the security token, and then the URL. So the URL changes between environments, and what you typically find is that developers will store that in a app settings config file, and when you change an app settings config file, it recycles the out pool. So it's also kind of tedious to maintain that per environment, so why not maintain it in Sitecore itself? And this provides that ability to say, in the lower environments, use test.salesforce.com, and the upper environment, use login, which is the production. So what's involved in wiring up a new DEF tenant? Here's a list, and I think I'm getting into a little bit too detailed here, but essentially I took the last screen and kind of made these into bullet points and showed where all of that data is going to go. But I'd love to talk to anybody about this later if you're interested. I think one important thing is at the very end that the data exchange framework also offers an easy way to kick off batch processes. So you can either manually, which I'm going to demonstrate for you, manually kick off the batch within Sitecore, or you can schedule it to run at your convenience. Which brings us to, what did we integrate with? We chose Microsoft Cognitive Services. So we're going back to the hackathon. We have been gathering a bunch of potential module ideas for the hackathon since November. We had no idea what was going to happen, what topics were going to be chosen, but we kind of figured there'd be a little bit of integration. We all love integration. It's like the funnest thing to do, I think. So someone on our team was Westworld. They were mapping doing facial recognition with a screenshot from Westworld to try to figure out what the masks behind a man were all about, to see if they mapped to certain characters. It was kind of funny. But anyway, that sparked an idea like, hey, maybe we should use that for the hackathon. So that was way back in November. But we all of us kind of thought, well, there's not really can't think of a universal practical reason to do that. But so I still stuck with it and was looking at what Microsoft Cognitive Services had to offer, and I saw this cool thing called computer vision. And let's see. Oh, it's an API for image recognition. So if you haven't heard of image recognition, it's a way of getting metadata about a visual content found in the image automatically. So you may have heard about this, where you upload an image and it'll pull back what it thinks is in the picture. So you can pull back information like the description, some tags, some general metadata. They even have an area where you can, the machine can intelligently find out whether this is adult content or even racy content. So it learns it as artificial intelligence, and it learns more and more as you upload more pictures. It can also tell you some of the dominant colors that exist in the picture. Pretty cool. So we are excited about integrating with this. So for the hackathon, we were really interested in the tags that were provided. And the tags are, again, based on artificial intelligence. And you see that what comes back with the tags are a confidence level. Like, how confident are they that in this picture there's grass? Or at the very bottom, you see it's in order, ascending order of confidence. At the bottom, we have the residential. It's at 36%, so it's a little less confident in knowing that this picture is a residential home in this case. So but there is a way to boost the confidence, and that's by feeding the machine positive images that show that this home is a residence, and over reinforcing a pattern, and then that confidence level will gradually go up. So you would have an account with Microsoft Cognitive Services and increase your own artificial intelligence with your account. There are other, we skipped some other APIs that were out there. There was, Google had one, IBM had one, and unbelievably they had that was the one I wanted to go with, but they had a bug where you couldn't even sign up for it. So
only for that weekend, guys.
Yeah, just for the weekend, and then Monday it worked like a charm, no problem. So we're a little bummed there. So ideally, what we wanted to do in the hackathon was to find an image in the media library or get a set of images in the media library and populate their field, the semantics field, which comes with Sitecore, and pull in all of those tags that we saw and tag the image. And then, I don't know a lot about SEO, but I think when you have these tags, well, you can put the tags in the meta description, and then you get a better SEO search quality with this information. It's auto-generated for you. So we thought this would be a cool feature using the tags. What we ended up with is a little bit less, just because of our, we had a few unfortunate obstacles and some rabbit holes that we ended up going down. We fell back on our contingency plan, where instead we had the image in the media library, and we just populated the keywords from Cognitive Services with a comma-separated list of tags. So I think it's proving, it's kind of a proof of concept. It's not doing our entire idea, but at least it's showing that we've integrated data exchange framework and getting it on the image. So we were pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
So before the demo, I did want to show you some of the resources, just because of this double machine thing going on here. These are real good resources. Obviously, where the examples are, and the data exchange framework documentation. Sitecore Hackathon had some good information, not on cognitive services, but that's a fun thing. If you guys would ever have a chance to get into the hackathon, I was thinking, right after we were done with it, I said, absolutely not. I'm never, ever, ever doing this again. But now it's starting to, like, the excitement is starting to come back, where I think I'll do it again, maybe. There's the URL for Cognitive Services, and also the YouTube video. I really wish we would have found this Adam and Nate video before the hackathon or during the hackathon, because it was an hour long. I don't think we would have spared that time, but it thoroughly explained everything. Every problem that we had was thoroughly explained in that, so I recommend that. All right, so let me see if I can switch over. I'm going to show you just a quick example or a quick demo of what we did.
While Sandy's switching it, I just wanted to add one more point, for the drive to do the tagging, the semantics that Sandy showed was like, if content author just comes on board and he wants to maybe promote an image, and he wants to find an image where there is a nice looking building or where there's a cat or a dog, he just goes in the content authoring system and types that, and it can pull all the images that have the tag, so it's easy for content author to pick what he wants, like without browsing through millions of media library items. So that, I guess, that was again one more perk that it would add.
Wonderful. Okay. Oh, you guys don't see what I'm seeing. I have this big thing in my way.
Yeah.
All right, I'll navigate around it. I think it's frozen.
You may need to recast again.
Okay.
Google will never make it to him figure this out.
The desktop
That's pretty
casting
funny.
is
Okay, let me try this again.
it does not
Throw
work
the last
good.
one away.
Yeah, I mean, they're about to go out of business.
It's not perfected.
Shame on them.
One more try.
The app casting works really good.
Yeah,
But
from
it's
a
the
phone.
desktop stuff that's not.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
we are up.
Yay. Okay, so most of the configuration that I've been speaking about takes place under the system node. When you install the data exchange framework, it creates this data exchange node, and underneath there you can create groupings of, you could say, the provider instance called a tenant, and when you establish a new tenant, it populates all these things you have to fill out, and this is the crazy configuration setup that took a while. So I'm not even going to open up half of them, but I do want to show you a little bit about this. So inside, I mentioned pipelines. Inside the pipelines, this is going to access the code to run all the logic that's necessary, and including accessing the provider pipeline steps that are available, like there's the reading the Sitecore items pipeline step that makes it easy to pull in the data. We didn't have to do any code for that. We just pointed to this, and there's a couple of settings, as I mentioned, like putting in the item root, where do you want to read that from, and what templates do you want to pull from this item root. And then down here, I won't bore you with these, but there's some other pipeline steps that go in and contact the cognitive services. So, well, I should show that. Under the cognitive services, it points to the endpoint. And as I mentioned, if you have multiple clients and you have one client has obviously one set of login information and the other client has another set, you would configure that difference in the endpoints. So take a look at this computer vision API, and you can see in there, you can put in the URL, and this is a place where you might put in that test.salesforce.com, for instance. You'd put that URL to contact the API. And then you would also, if you're doing a Salesforce provider, and here you would also, let me expand a little bit, put in things like the unique subscriber ID. This API also required that you pass in the language. And then there is a visual features field which says what information from cognitive services did you want. In our case, we wanted the tags. So this information we chose as things that could change per integration to content to cognitive services, and which makes it reusable. Not that I'd reuse what we've done, we certainly rewrite it, but this is the type of thing that you might customize. So let's take a look at this in action. Right? We created a specific folder. In here we had cat and dog, family with umbrella. But here we have the dog, and I think I deleted it. Yes, I deleted all the keywords. So you see the dog doesn't have any. The cat I didn't bother deleting yet, but the image of the dog is our little mascot, because when you Google images and look for a dog, this is the first one that comes up, so he became our mascot, because you got to do things very efficiently in the hackathon. But he's cute. So let's run it and see what happens. I'm going to find the pipeline batch. So the pipeline batch takes all of the pipelines, or it points to one, which is pointing, cascading down, and it will run all of those pipelines that we were taking a look at, like reading the Sitecore item and massaging it if needed, and then going into cognitive services, sending the image, and then pulling back the tags and saving them eventually. Oops, I didn't mean to be in endpoints. Okay, so here's the pipeline batch, and this is what I was referring to. There's a simple run button. So as I mentioned, you can either schedule it or you can press this run button and run it manually. So I'm going to kick it off. Real quick process. It tells you it started. I know it's probably complete, but let's take a look down here. You get statistics like when it was last when it was last run, and when it was the last time this was started, and when it finished. And then some log information. So I can see here that it matches when it searched that item root that we put in. It was looking for a particular template. It found 3 matches, and it ran the pipelines against all 3 of those items. So let's take a look at dog. And there are the keywords. So it came back with grass, dog, outdoor, frisbee, because there's tons of frisbees in there. There's not one frisbee in there, but it did its best to, it was assuming that it was in a park and using a frisbee apparently, or the dog was running after a frisbee, running and carrying. Oh, maybe it thought the tongue was the frisbee. But anyway, so that is what we created for the hackathon. Isn't it cognitive services cool?
Yeah. Do you know any like real use cases of how Microsoft cognitive services is being used, or any like cool examples of how it's used in real life today?
In conjunction with Sitecore, or
with or without?
Oh, it's used for SEO purposes. It's used for uploading. Okay, so you know there's a lot of websites that allow you to upload a file, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it's a build your own website or something like that. That company, what's a company that does that?
Like a Squarespace?
Yeah, like Squarespace. They may not want pornography sites on there, so therefore they could use this filter, and anytime somebody uploaded the image, it could be sent to the services and be tagged whether or not it's racy or adult content and rejected. So that's, unfortunately, I didn't want to mention pornography at all.
No, even like Instagram, Twitter, like when you're uploading images, they could run and see if there's any,
Facial recognition is used, so us being in the entertainment industry capital, for movies, there's actually royalties on how many seconds you're on the screen. So they're actually using the facial recognition to identify who the actor is. Right now, they actually pay people to go sit there and watch movies and record time. So now they're using that to actually convert that frame by frame and actually record time.
I was wondering if Amazon Prime did something like that, because you know how they show the...
So Amazon Prime has the X-ray, which looks at the frame and tells you who's on the TV.
Yeah.
Actually, a few days back, Google released its video search APIs too, so now you can actually search videos.
That's cool.
That's the next hackathon.
Okay.
So, you talk about it being very reusable and you can plug it in for other clients. Have we at Verndale created this to be a reusable thing? Because I can see so much reuse and so much use for this. It might not be something that a client would be like, I need this, I want this. They probably don't know that they want it right now, but.
Right, well, you wouldn't mention it to them. You would say, provide you with the integration, and hey, guess what? You can configure it, on the fly rather than having coding changes that are completely.
There's also a module that Mark Stiles has released recently, which integrates with this cognitive services, and it has a lot of,
Oh, he stole our idea?
I didn't want to
Just
spoil
kidding.
your...
Just wait till the end.
There is a module out there where, if you want, you can add on more code so that it integrates with more APIs of cognitive services.
Oh, cool.
And, it's a Sitecore module.
and it's already built and everything, so.
No, not everything is
Oh,
built.
it's not.
So he basically provided a framework, and he did some builds for some of the APIs, but you know, it's always, there will be extensions that you will need. Not everything will be meant by the model. It's a framework that he built, so.
Okay, cool, I would love to see that.
Sounds like there's pretty high confidence in it across, like, with all technology people. Which is cool, because I'm like kind of interested in using it for something that we need to do.
Cognitive
Where's the
services or data
acronym for
exchange?
Cognitive services.
Oh, okay, oh, really?
Yeah, I think more than this, if you also look at machine learning, and Azure machine learning services and so on, I've integrated within like 2 hours. I could integrate and
Really?
see things like giving price evaluations and so on. So if you think about those also, there are a lot more opportunities for you, like, you know, for example, any product sites or so on, where you have products and integrate with Sitecore experience, you know, XDB customer profiles, and see the page paths that the customers have viewed, right? And you could feed it what kind of, I mean, what are the people paths which brought you a product, right? So what is the success criteria, success conversion? And feed it for others using machine learning, so that you can drive people through that same experience path, so that they get those products, you know. So there are a lot of opportunities
Or
for
modify the content along the way.
Machine learning. That was Coveo machine learning.
So you bring up that product that you know they actually want to get to,
Yeah,
and instead of having to go through the full path, just
it's right there.
yeah.
It's really neat.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's work.
So Sandy, one comment I have is like,
She does this all the time.
when we actually built this, it didn't sound that interesting, but when you presented, it does sound interesting.
Okay, I know, Liz put out what we did, and I was like, that doesn't sound very appealing, I had a lot of fun with it. What were you saying?
What was your challenge with now being able to do the actual tagging?
The lack of time.
Yeah, we went through a lot of like rabbit holes, as she said. Like,
Yeah,
it was hard.
It wasn't, I know that this might, in retrospect, I think, well, that's really stupid, but it took us up until, we were doing other things, but it took us up until within the last hour that we started figuring out the Sitecore provider side of it. And so, of course, that tagging is back and forth between the Sitecore providers using that. And so we didn't have the time to go in and put those in there. But in retrospect, I'm looking at that, oh man, I wish I had just an inkling of knowledge on that. But we diverted off onto so many tangents. We were dragged in different directions and just unfortunately didn't get to know the Sitecore provider in time to implement the tagging part. Because it's automatic, it's all configuration. Right, yeah. But unfortunately, but I'm excited, as I mentioned, I think, that we have some upcoming clients who have lots of integrations, and I really want to see how much we can use the data exchange framework to handle their integrations. Anything else? Did you? Cool, thank you.
Good job,
I can't question that. We did that. I can't give out a question.
Any question?
That was it for us, guys. We will make this available. I think the presentation, the recording's on YouTube, so you'll be able to go on and grab it probably within just a couple minutes, assuming Google doesn't go under. But, and then we're going to make the presentations available as well through the meetup. And that's about it. Hopefully we'll get to do more of these, more frequently, and especially in person. Nice to meet some folks in the community.
Thanks for
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Dave, for organizing.
Yeah, we know traffic isn't the best around here, so thank you. You guys are the stars.
And great work.
Thank you. And thank you for moving the table.
That was fun. Yeah, that was a lot.
Nice.
Interesting.
Where did the sun go?